allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, City Clerk Kathy Swanson, will you do a roll call for us, please?
Sure. Mayor McGowan.
Here.
Tom Hastings.
Here.
John Blondo.
Here.
Ron Spears is absent. Stephen Harper is absent. Mickey Holtz.
Here.
Beth Williams. Here. Ken Ratliff.
Here.
So Stephen phoned earlier today that he's camping and he has can't communicate with by phone, and Ron is still not quite well enough yet. So I did
Make a motion to excuse those two council members.
moved and seconded to excuse the two absent council members. All in favor with aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. That's all right. So under meeting agenda, see we have an amended one, and we even want to amend that. So one of the things that's on here that we didn't quite catch at first is that we will have a public hearing on the comp plan presentation today. And the other thing is that Mike needs to go a little bit earlier. He has some other deals. So we want to move new business up to after the public appearances so that he can go. And then also, just so you know, Kirk needs to go up to the Roslyn. So after he gives his presentation, he's got a blast off too.
Okay.
So with those changes, is there approval of the agenda? Moved and seconded to amend the agenda as presented. All in favor with aye?
One question.
Huh? Question?
Was the comp plan for the public hearing advertised?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
It was advertised, and that's why
Okay.
it got moved up. So, yes.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah, for sure. I know, I checked on that too. Okay, so, no announcements, appointments, or recognitions right now, and so we're down to the consent agenda. Is there a motion for that?
Move that we adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded to accept the consent agenda. All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, consent agenda. So we'll go down to officer reports, and we'll start off with Rob Ullman, our city administrator.
Good, thank you, Honorable Mayor, City Council. We have a packed agenda. It's going to be exciting, so I'll keep it short. Well, we've got another $11,000 check. Last week, if you remember, we're part of the Central Washington Home Builders Association. And last week, I went to one of their meetings and where they passed out what we're enrolled in a ROII program, Return on Industrial Insurance. And last year, I think it was near 14,000. This year was another 11,000. So it's a good program to be in.
That's how we manage our L&I situation.
It's an insurance refund.
Yes.
It's a L&I insurance refund. That's correct. And in order to qualify, you have to have. And I just found out. I didn't know how. I thought, well, because we have a building department because it's Central Washington Home Build. No, it's the public works. It's the guys out in the field. That's how the cities qualify. So any city could do it, but you have to be part of an association that has this program, and it costs like I think $600 to be part of the association, and then we get a big check, and then they help if we ever have L&I claims. They do help. They have a processor that helps us through the whole thing
To keep our claims down.
down. So that was good last week. As you probably already know, we have a meet and greet this Thursday for the police chief candidates. There will be 5 candidates that the public is all invited. Council, of course, is invited. Everyone's invited. This coming Thursday at the Senior Center, 5:30. It's not gonna be like a formal sit-down thing and you ask, you just go up and you could meet them. Informal meet and greet.
And there'll be individual rating sheets, you can jot down your notes.
And I continue to go to the KitCom meetings. Things appear to be running a lot smoother after we had some negotiations with the Teamsters and whatnot. So things are going there good. I did go to the Law and Justice meeting last week. Fortunately, our acting Chief of Police, Kirk, was there too. So probably won't have to attend the next one, hopefully. But it's a good meeting. We do need representation from the Upper County because we do deal with different things. And that's all I had for my report.
Okay, so next we'll go to our city planner.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council. I'm going to keep it brief because I've got a lot to say later about the comp plan. I wanted to make an announcement, and that is that our planning technician, who's over here, Isaac, he's been with us since the spring of 2017. Started as an intern, actually as a class, the land use planning class at Central, did some work in the very beginning of our comprehensive plan process that really got us going. And then he and another fellow student were interns over the summer, and that just kind of translated into a longer internship and eventually this planning technician position. And he's been an integral part of the city planning daily operations for 2 years. And he has recently graduated from Central Washington University and found a job over in Woodinville. So his last day is this Friday, and he's going to be sorely missed, and I just wanted to recognize his contribution to the city. And so, good job, Isaac. Very nice. And then, so we will be less in the planning department than we have been, and to kind of bridge the gap in the near term, we're going to be looking for some on-call planning assistance, not hiring right away. We're going to do some organization within our department and just use what we need to move forward with in the short term until we have a long-term plan. So that's my announcement for staffing. But I also wanted to make an announcement that before the police chief interview or open house is on Thursday night, tomorrow night right here we have an open house for our phase 3 design of the downtown revitalization plan. So we haven't seen the rest yet. We've seen the last time we had an event like this was for the preferred alternative in 2017, when we looked at a conceptual of what a block might look like or what an intersection might look like, the street tree layout and the parking and such. This one will look at the 60% design from Billings Avenue all the way to PO Avenue, everything in between, and have some really good close-ups of each block. So we can look at what that design looks like at this point. It's 60%, so this is a good opportunity to really look at those details and get some information back to the engineers. So that starts at 4:30. Oh dear. So I'll get back to you on when it starts. But I think there's a flyer over there on the desk, or on the table. So it's tomorrow early afternoon, early evening, 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock.
Thanks.
4 o'clock.
4 to 6 tomorrow, here. Then the police the next night. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so our Public Works Director, Mike Engelhardt.
Mayor, council members, I'll keep it brief as well. Nobody's here to listen to me tonight. But I do want to announce that it's official. We had the ribbon cutting last Saturday for Hartwig Boulevard. So South Cle Elum Way is no longer from First to the bridge, is now Hartwig Boulevard. Today, I want to take my hat off to the county. They came in, did a great job. We didn't have any incidents. Chip seals are complete for the ones we had designed for this spring anyway. We're working on looking at some areas for this fall's chip seal, some areas that might need some attention. So we're working on that. So that's all I got for tonight.
Okay. We'll catch up with you a little later in a minute. All right. So next, we'll go to our acting chief, first one.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. The big news for the police department, I'm sure you've seen all over Facebook, et cetera, is the debit credit card scam, so I wanted to address that. I did fill out a press release that's been provided to the Tribune, so I'm sure it'll be published then as well. Just take me a second to read this. So the police department has currently received several complaints where victims' debit card accounts had fraudulent charges placed on them. This time there's at least 17 victims who have come forth who all bank at the Cashmere Valley Bank. Cashmere Valley Bank is being cooperative with the investigation and assured the police department they have not experienced a security breach with their bank records. This time it's believed the account numbers were illegally obtained by the use of a skimmer. Kitsap Valley Bank has not been able to determine a time frame on the date or dates that their customers' account numbers were captured by a skimming device, and we do expect several more customers to report fraudulent charges in the next few days. Cashmere Valley Bank was also not the only bank that experienced this with their customers. Since the start of the month, we've had approximately 30, which included Washington Federal, U.S. Bank, etc. Most of the accounts where the charges were drawn from was from various ATM machines, all the way from Texas, all the way back up to here, Ellensburg, Yakima, etc. So, included in the press release, we did provide some fraud prevention tips. We've had Officer Rogers. She has attended several fraud classes and internet crime class and seminars in the past, so she provided this list, so hopefully they'll publish that as well. So anyhow, it's an ongoing investigation. The bank has reimbursed all parties of their money, so basically right now the bank is the victim in this case. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Well, didn't you mention that there's a good chance that these numbers were taken some time ago?
Yes, it's very common for the numbers to be taken up to months ago. Those numbers are then stored and they're actually sold off, and now they're being put into play. So it's like I said, the bank hasn't been able to determine when the numbers were actually skimmed. It could have been months ago.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So to citizen comments on non-agenda items. Is there anyone here that wishes to address the council on any of their concerns this time? No? Okay. We'll move on down then to public appearance then.
She's on her way.
Oh, so since she's on her way, we'll go with Debbie Bogart from the Downtown Association first. I was missing somebody. I was looking for a face. And she read my mind.
Good evening, I'm Debbie Bogart, the Executive Director for the Cle Elum Downtown Association. And Mayor and Council members, it's an honor to be here tonight. Thank you. Amy just realized that the council meeting had changed times, so she's on her way. She got caught like I did last time. So I wanted to share a few things with you tonight. First, I'm going to share a little handout on Pioneer Days. Planning has been going really well. I've had a lot of fun with this, getting to know people as a new executive director here in Cle Elum. You know, I remember Pioneer Days as Logging Festival, or I remember it as Pioneer Days, and I have to tell you that this year's events are going to be great, but we're going to be even greater in the future because there's a lot of excitement out there with the partners to build Pioneer Days and to build it back to being a bigger, a larger event and a countywide event, or a countywide event. So that's something I'm looking forward to working with people on in the future. There'll be a lot of information on this coming out in the Tribune here in the next couple of weeks. This is a report that we keep. It's an analytical report, and it's based on our website, what happens on our website. I'm going to pass it to you. Council can look at it. This is new to me. It's something that I haven't really gone over with our Genesis account, but it's kind of exciting to see that our website's being used, that what our top sources are, the top pages within our website, what cities are visiting our website, and how our Facebook is growing. So I'm going to be using this report to measure and to monitor what happens through CETA with our social media and our online activities to see how we grow, how we market, and how we can get the word out on not only on the association, but especially on what's happening in our downtown area. I can tell you that in Cle Elum, social media is not the strongest. Businesses don't use it at the highest level that they could, and that is a goal that we have. It's a communication tool, but face-to-face is still the way to go with businesses and people in Cle Elum, and that's okay, that's good. That's one of the best ways. But we want to help them grow the understanding that if you use Facebook or social media tools, you reach a bigger market outside of Cle Elum to help bring tourism in, help bring retail into our downtown area. So we'll be looking at this and watching this over the next quarter. Each quarter we'll get a report on this, and I'll share with you some of the changes that happen with that. I wanted to share a couple of things tonight about our committees. I think you know we have 4 committees for CETA. We have promotions, we have design, organization, and economic vitality. And I wanted to go over real quickly what those committees are doing. Within our promotions committee, they've been very involved in Pioneer Days. And they're also taking a more strategic look at how do we promote Cle Elum? What do we do? Is it more events? Is it helping our businesses learn how to promote themselves and getting it out there? It's all about that revitalization, not only how we look out on the buildings and our streets, but also inside, how do we get the word out? So our committee is going to be taking a very active role in increasing numbers of people on the promotions committee and how we do that. Organization, which is our board and our infrastructure, are looking strategically at who should be members of our board. We have the ability to have 15 members on our board, and we're looking at increasing that. So we are identifying leaders in our community and our business community that we think are vital, that can help CETA grow and reach the goals that we have. So that's strategically being done right now, and looking at a diverse board, someone that represents our community well, not just certain age or certain ethnicity, but a very diverse board. Our design team has had some exciting things happening. We're getting ready to celebrate what's happened up at Wellsprings, am I right? I get the business mixed up over there, I apologize. But it's the one that was just redone by Patricia Miller and Jerk Rental Properties. And they just finished a facade grant. It's a little log house that became a bigger log house. And if you notice how nice it is outside, so CETA helped them fund their landscaping that's being done. And they also are having an open house on Thursday at 3 o'clock. It would be really nice. You could go there, then you can go meet your police officer to see what they've done there. And because of our help, they are very excited about how that's bringing business to their door. We also will be celebrating what's happening here at the City Council. There's the new signs up, you're going to be painting, and when that's part of the process of us helping businesses look different downtown, whether it's a facade or it's a restructuring within your business area. The fourth committee is our Economic Vitality Committee. We finally launched this committee, and this is a very exciting committee. This committee is one whose role is to identify new market opportunities for traditional commercial district, find new uses for historical commercial buildings, and stimulate investment in the property. This committee is going to develop a thorough understanding of the economic conditions that we have here in Cle Elum, and what is it that we can do for incremental growth to help revitalize. So they're going to be taking a look at the downtown assets and building inventory. They're going to be compiling a photo library of businesses, verifying and re-verifying owner and business owner information, collecting data points from current businesses, and we're going to be maintaining this information on a database that's called Maestro, and it's a Main Street. It's a national database. So it helps us feed into that, get information back nationally what the trends are, as well as continue our own trends so that we can look at what's the business growth, what changes are we expecting, what changes are occurring, how are sales going, what do we need to do to update and maintain and continue to help the downtown become even more vital. I can use this tool also for communications, for a lot of newsletters or touches with our different businesses to get them more engaged and get information out. one of the things I did this week, we like to partner, so one of the things I did this week is I walked around town. One of my goals the first 3 months was to meet every business owner or business in this community. I've done that in 7 weeks, so I've been kind of sprinting. But the July 4th Pioneer Day stuff has helped me getting that out the door to everybody. But I helped also to put out notices about the Phase 3 tomorrow afternoon. And I would like to say that our businesses are going to be here tomorrow afternoon, but I have to tell you that's a work time. 4 o'clock in the afternoon they're working, and they don't have staff to release them to come to meetings like that. So I don't know what the input's going to be. I've offered for them to email me their information if they have any questions. I haven't received it. This concerns me. I am concerned about the communication gap that there is between our city, our business and our city. It's nobody's fault. There's a gap. And I personally, as the executive director, that's a goal for me, is how do we bridge this gap? Because when the storm drain didn't pass at the last council meeting, people don't know why. They don't understand what's going on. There was a Facebook communication that went out, and that's all that they feel has gone out, and most of them don't use Facebook. So how do we get that news out? I'm not the conveyor of news from the city standpoint, but I am the recipient of comments from the business. So to be the person on the street or the person that can help the city with communication, I want to know how we can do that and do it in a way that's effective for everybody. Because my role is to advocate for businesses, support businesses, but also be aware of what happens in the city and how do we make it stronger. So I'm coming to you tonight saying there's a lot of things happening in CETA, but communication is a major, major goal with our community, with our city, with you. Help me, is what I'm asking you. Help me to get that, make that stronger and more effective here in our community, please. And so whether it's a work session down the road or a strategic planning process, I don't know. And I know we've all heard the stories. We've heard this before. Nobody cares. There's a lot of care in this community about this community. It's just how do we communicate it? How do we communicate back and forth? How do we build that bridge? And I am very concerned this week after meeting with lots of businesses, handing out information on Pioneer Days and handing out the notices about Phase 3. There's a gap there, people, council members. How do we fix that gap? I don't know, but I'm telling you I'm here to help, and I ask you, let's help me figure this out. So, anyway, thank you. I'm looking forward to Pioneer Days, and I hope you are all also. So, thanks.
And I will be working with Debbie about that.
We
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that information. Okay, so now we'll go to the Darcy Bartura tag teams from Nature Conservancy.
For PowerPoints, they would have to look in the middle all the time. So, nice to look at some pretty pictures. Thank you very much. Okay, Mayor McGowan, City Council, thank you for your time this evening. As I mentioned, we're going to have a dueling presentation here myself. Brian Schnee, the Community Coordinator for Nature Conservancy here in Central Washington, and Darcy Ventura, the Forest Partnership Manager for Nature Conservancy, are kind of going to be tag teaming this. We're going to provide an update on what the Nature Conservancy is doing in the area.
We didn't quite get your name?
Oh, Brian Sternidi, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Everyone knows I'm going to speak up.
Sorry.
So we're going to kind of talk about what the Nature Conservancy is, what we're doing in the area, then we're going to talk about this overall community forest vision that you might have heard some rattling around about. So we'll get right into it.
No clicker.
Oh, jeez.
I could just point.
No, just, you go and we'll return that to me. There's only one USB port, and so it's either the mouse or the clicker.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll give you the clicker.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Stand by.
Stand up. We're back. No amount of troubleshooting. I'll get it perfect.
It's all good, that's what presentation's all about, thank you.
That should work.
All right, beautiful. So I'd just like to start off with the Nature Conservancy's vision. I'm usually not one for visions and taglines and stuff like that, but I really think that thriving nature and thriving communities embodies what we're doing here in Cle Elum. I've worked on the community side in Upper County, and I've worked now working the natural resources side in Upper County, so I really see this intersection where Conservancy knows that in order to focus on nature, we also have to focus on the community. Without the values of Upper County and Kittitas County as a whole, values of what we're doing, it's not going to work. So we really try to focus on the intersection of those two pieces. Washington is unique, and so are we like to say. We come up with innovative solutions to problems. We have a whole science-based team to come up with solutions on large scales. We have trusted partnerships with U.S. Forest Service, Department of Natural Resources, city councils, Yakima Nation. So we're able to work with all these trusted partners and bring work to scale. So when we work with these partners, we're able to work cross-boundary in this checkerboard management out here and really bring vision and work to scale. Let's see. Some quick facts about the Conservancy. Nature Conservancy is the world's largest conservation organization. We have our main office in Washington here is in Seattle, and it started in 1959. We have 5 offices across the state. The thing they forget to mention on this map is that Cle Elum is the best out of all those offices. I'll update it, don't worry. So yeah, we have Seattle, Mount Vernon, Wenatchee, Cle Elum, and Yakima. So about 70 employees across the state. Tons of volunteers, lots of acres owned, and lots of acres protected in the area. We focus our work mainly on these kind of 5 buckets of different work. So land, water, cities, oceans, and climate, and everything kind of falls underneath climate. And our team out here in Cle Elum is mainly focused on the land part. So restoring forests to build fire resilience, connecting habitats, and benefiting local economies. So that's where that intersection comes into play. So all those things we do for the land scheme, we hope to try to benefit the communities in which we're working, because if not, there's not a lot of point doing the work. So that brings us to our 2014 acquisition. Some of you might have heard in the past, in 2014, Plum Creek Timber was divesting from land across the Pacific Northwest. And almost 50,000 acres, 48,000 acres here was acquired by a conservation organization, conservation investor, and named TNC as the land manager. So we do not own this land, we're just managing it. This land is vital as it protects wildlife habitats, forest recreation, promotes forest recreation, and provides clean water. It also protects the headwaters of the Yakima Basin, which, as you might know, is a pretty important river to the agricultural industry, $1.8 billion industry downstream, so that's very important. It supports critical habitat and supports cross-boundary land management. So like I said, working with partners to bring things to scale, working across that checkerboard management. And I really like to focus on this slide again, the kind of recreation, because we all like to link it. I always like to link this back to the communities and talking about placing values on community ownership. We're 90 miles away from 2.2 million people, so we've got a plan for that. We've got a plan for the amount of recreation that's coming into the area and have good solid plans to manage that and not just kind of be overrun by it. So in that, I'm going to hand it off to Darcy for the next portion of our presentation.
Thanks.
Thank
It's a
you.
team approach. Just to clarify things, if you don't know, we actually have a storefront office just 2 blocks down the road on the right. Come in and see us anytime. We have a map. Well, thank you. We have, let's see if I get this right. Right button, okay. So there's a much cooler version of this map on our wall that is, I think it's 7 feet tall and 9 feet wide, and goes much beyond this scale, so you can sit and plan your next backpacking experience. It's pretty mesmerizing, so please come visit us. The other thing I wanted to clarify is that Brian did a great job, but just to be completely clear, we are actually one of the owners. When the land was purchased, we're one of many funders that came together to do it. So we're land managers, but we're also in it financially. But it was a $50 million project, so it's a lot of money. We didn't have all of that sitting around. So we talked to some of our friends in the conservation world and pulled that together. You remember that Brian mentioned at the top, community forest vision at the top of the presentation, and so that's what I want to move forward to talking to you about. A lot of people, and as Brian mentioned, we don't actually own the land, we manage it. A lot of people think the Nature Conservancy came in, yay, it's protected, great. It's the way that I've found it's best to describe it is we push the pause button on some of the threat of that land while we work with the community and partners to figure out what permanent protection looks like. So we had the benefit of having some of those friends in the conservation world that were able to come together and bring in the financing for this project, but there's also a clock ticking on it. And we currently have about 10 years to work towards the permanent conservation of that land. And at this point, we're closer to 9.5. After 10 years, we'll lose control of the outcome of the community benefit. So all this time, we have been working directly with our partners to try and figure out lasting solutions. But after 10 years, we can't guarantee what will happen. And so that means, public access and recreational use could be uncertain. So the land's not permanently protected, but we're working hard. I live in Roslyn. I've been in town for loitering for about 19 years and here full-time for about 15 years. I care deeply about this land and have for a long time. So we're working hard. We have had some successes in transitioning the land. In some of the areas, if you think back to that map, there's plenty of areas that are way up and checkerboarded with the federal ownership. And there it makes sense to transition that to the Forest Service. It's just easier for land management, for forest health. But there's other areas which maybe there's different solutions that we should be thinking about. So we've already transitioned, or in the process of transitioning, somewhere between 7,000 and 11,000 acres to the Forest Service. We've put in some applications to Forest Legacy, but there's this other bucket that we haven't fully explored, and that is the community forest option. So we started having some conversations about this last fall, and started with county commissioners, started talking to city council members, started talking to a whole list of our partners saying, what do you think about this? Would this be of interest to you? And everybody said, well, you mean like the Tiana way? And it's like, well, yeah, that's one model, but there's actually a whole slew of models around the country. And for us, the most important things are that it would have community control, community governance, and have lasting community benefits. So, what is a community forest? The state's really been grappling with this over the last year or two, and this is a wordy slide, but it is foundational, so I included it. And I'm going to talk about those 4 common principles. So, community has that secured access and rights to forest resources at the community level. Examples that I've seen on the East Coast, a school needs a new gym floor. They go to the community forest. And they work with local mills to saw it and finish it, and it's installed. A library needs new bookshelves. They go to the community forest. This stuff it's not just an idea. This is happening all around the country. The community participates in management decisions. Community receives value and benefit from the land that reinforce local community and economic development goals. And obviously we're the Nature Conservancy, conservation values of the property are permanently protected, and that's what we're most interested in. But we want all of these 4 things to be a reality if this is to move forward. Just a couple other items that kind of dive into it a little bit deeper. We think of it as a holistic forest ownership and management model that's really interesting. We'd like to, the Nature Conservancy as land managers really focuses on providing local jobs and hiring local contractors for the forest thinning work that we do. We'd like to see that continue and grow, create new business opportunities, export goods, and keep those profits local. We think protecting working forests helps protect us from conversion to development, which if you think of the Cle Elum Ridge, that 9,600 acres, what that could have looked like during Jolly Mountain Fire. That would have been very scary for a lot of people. It protects the water supply and has permanent environmental benefits. So where we are, it's always great to say we don't have a particular vision, but that's actually intentional. When we started thinking about this, I told our team, I'm willing to go down this pathway as long as we understand that if the community says no, that's the answer and we have to go back to the drawing board and find another option. So we've been working on that. We started, as I mentioned, by going on some trips. First thing was, let's talk to people that need to be a part of this decision, and we got a grant to take people on these trips with the goal of expanding everybody's collective knowledge of what's possible. So we're not all just thinking about Teanaway Community Forest, bless them, I love them, I've been on their advisory committee and Brian is now, but there's lots of opportunities out there. So we went out to Montana and visited the Blackfoot Community Conservation Area, which is 41,000 acres, it's huge. And we took Commissioner O'Shaughnessy, we took Larry Leach from DNR, Melissa Spieg from the Conservation Trust up in Roslyn, and David Cecc with Washington Farm Forestry Association. This model is incredible. A lot of partners have come together. If we were to apply this model here, you might see, maybe it includes the TNC managed land. It could include other lands that are under other ownerships. For example, it could have federal land in there that is the portion that was recently designated as National Heritage Area. Other land ownership, it could have some DNR land in there. Still remaining in that ownership model, but under different management plans and governed by a community board. So that's interesting. We went out to New Hampshire and we took John Storch and Mitchell Long, full disclosure, that's my husband. There were many lawyers involved in that conversation of where he could go. Turned out he could go. But we went out there and we looked at 6 different community forest models, ranging from about 900 acres up to 56,000 acres. Out there, the town forest model and on the East Coast is rich. There's a lot of history in it. That's where they're going for their gym floors. And it was really inspiring. One story that I share at most presentations about this is there's Down East Lakes, Maine Community Forest. And they are a small community, very rural, about 300 residents, heavily dependent on the forest for their economy. Lots of guides, hunting. And the land all around them was under industrial management by a paper company. They decided to divest, like Plum Creek did, and the citizens went to the company and said, this forest is really important to us, we'd like to try to buy it. And they were kind of like, oh, small town, you guys are so cute, there's no way you'll be able to pull this off. And so they brought in some financial experts that kind of did an analysis of who do you know that's a millionaire and how can you raise some money. And that person came back and also said, yeah, I admire that you're trying, but forget about it. So $33 million later, 56,000 acres, they own that community forest, and it's the lifeblood of their community. It's amazing to see what's possible. So these trips were really critical in this regard. Just went right down to Oregon to the Hood River Community Forest, or if you can squint on that sign on the right, you see it says Hood River County Tree Farm. This is the only county-owned model that we saw. The revenue from their timber supports 1/3 of their annual county budget. So so when the community comes to them and says, well, we want to increase some buffers or we want to do that, they can easily do the math and say, okay, but that's one police officer. So this is a really fascinating model. We took Gary Burt with us, Nikki Pazzi with Mount Sun Greenway Trust, and Jeff Newman, who's started the Tamarack Trail Builders and has been really active on the Taos of Teanaway project. So, lots of trips, lots of tours, lots of conversations. It's been fascinating. These are the lands that we're considering for this vision. So up here we've got, is that winter? No. There's the Cle Elum Ridge above Roslyn and Cle Elum and Ronald. Obviously, that area is largely non-motorized, but diverse recreation, like mountain biking, hiking, birding, etc. There's the Tainum watershed, about 12,000 acres that we manage, highly motorized in that area. And Cabin Creek, which is less recreation, more timber production. These are the pieces that we're looking at. One of the things that we're thinking about right now, but it comes to the community, is the Cle Elum, or the Cabin Creek portion could be focused on timber revenue, which supports the rest of the forest into the future. I'm talking too long, so this is the challenge. This is what we want to engage with you about, really having you as our eyes and ears. We want to brief you on this process. Obviously, you're a critical stakeholder. We want to hear your thoughts. as this idea is getting out in the community and you're talking about it with your constituents, we'd love to have more conversations with you to understand how it's being received. And I'll mention where we're at. We just went through from phase 1 to phase 2. As I mentioned, we're not moving forward unless the community says yes. So we've designed this with phase 1, engagement and tours. Phase 2 is really throwing our shoulder into it and defining our vision. On June 6th, all those stakeholders came together. Look, I even have a picture. And they decided, yes, this is important. We want to do this. So a couple of comments. Gary Burnt said, as former mayor of Cle Elum, I watched the land diminish and knew that that development was next. I had great relief that it would be preserved for the community. It's our responsibility to maintain what TNC has started. And as Cordy Cook from Roslyn said, this opportunity comes once in a lifetime. If we do not act, we've left the next generation down. So we're bringing this idea to you, and we're also coming with a request. I have some handouts that detail this plan, but I didn't want to give it to you because I'd just be staring at that. But we also have a letter of support. Brian has been busy working on a National Parks grant.
Yep, the National Park Service Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program. So what it is, it's a grant application, but there's no money involved. So they actually work with Roslyn Urban Forest. I talked to a bunch of community forest models around Washington and Montana about them. They provide bandwidth, they provide support, they provide drafting agendas, minutes, taking minutes, working on design plans for community outreach and all sorts of stuff like that we need support and bandwidth from. So we're coming to you with a request for a letter of support for the application. So we're going to pass out, I believe I have 9 copies, so it should be enough for all of City Council and everyone sitting over there. And we're asking Mayor McGowan would mind, since he was at that meeting with us, if he would mind supporting us for the signature on that letter. Obviously, take time to look over it.
I understand you need to look at it before you sign, would you mention the deadline is this Friday?
Well, if you guys want to take a look at it.
So here's a,
Look quick.
Yeah, that's our next go.
Well, let's look at it real quick, and we can ask the council if they want to authorize me to sign this. It's a letter of support for their project. And it talks about who we are, what we do, and what TNC is trying to work at.
we can put this on letter, if they decide to sign it, we can put this, if you wanted to give it to us digitally, we can put it on letterhead.
Sure, yeah.
Happy to do.
And then,
Thank you.
And you can get it tomorrow, if they decide, they may decide, like, we don't want to have nothing to do with this. You never know.
We do look like that.
I'll mention that we're planning our next meeting with those stakeholders that have said, yes, we want to move on to phase 2. And one of the key questions of that first meeting will likely be who's missing from this table, because we don't assume that we have the right people there yet. We need to figure that out.
Another key question will be, hopefully, if we do get this award, we get to design what help the National Park Service will provide for us. So we get to craft. It's not just a blanket application. It's a unique crafting to each individual project.
Well, we want to support them, so I think I was in favor of the mayor signing this letter of support.
I second that.
Okay, moved and seconded. Oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
and moved and seconded to authorize the mayor to sign this letter of support for the TNC conservation grant. And you have a comment?
I don't see any financial obligation to the city in giving support.
Yeah, this is all simply planning, trying to move it ahead. Okay, so that was the motion. Any other questions on it? Otherwise, all in favor of aye?
Hi.
Opposed? Okay, get them a copy and we'll put a Cle Elum thing on it.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
You bet.
Come visit us. Let's talk.
Yeah,
Yes, and I
come
do,
look at our
though,
map.
I am participating in this process, and I'll drag along everyone I can think of. Okay,
oh, we need the clicker back.
Oh,
clicker back. That's all right. So now, last but not not least, we'll go to Amy McGuffin.
Honorable Mayor, City Council members, sorry for my tardiness, your new time got me. I was in the office working and it was one of those things that you just have a gut feeling of, I wonder if it's at 6 o'clock. And I got into my recycle bin and the agenda was there and sure enough it was 6 o'clock and Debbie had just texted me, you're where it's 6 o'clock. I said, I'm on the road. So I apologize for my lateness and I appreciate your flexibility.
And you didn't get a ticket getting here.
No, but I sure was passing everybody. So, 21 minutes, just so you know. Wow. The officer was...
You could have quiet, he left. They couldn't catch you.
Yeah. Well, the chamber always appreciates the opportunity to give some updates in regards to what the chamber is doing on behalf of the city of Cle Elum. So what I've handed out to you is our monthly recap. Obviously, we're a month behind, so this is for the May recap of our tourism campaign, which we, as usual, direct it to the discovercleelum.com. And so all of our campaign ads go directly to that website. So in front of you, you'll see in the pretty picture area is the overview of where we have advertised the city of Cle Elum, activities, things to do, top restaurant choices, recreation activities. And so we go from a social media platform. Over the years that we've been doing this for you, the social media platform has been the most success to get it out there in a more broad sense. So we just wanted to let you see those, and it looks like we're doing quite well. Especially our Instagram, which we thought was an interesting thing. But it doesn't surprise us because we have beautiful pictures. And so a lot of people really grasp the pictures to get an emotion, and then they follow and click through to get more information. So on the back side, this shows you how much time they're spending on the website. And we kind of took it a versus month to month versus, and then a year to date versus from 2018. So as you see, we're still doing quite well in regards to the web analytics. I usually go really quickly along this report just because of the fact we've been doing it for so long. Is there any questions in regards to what's in front of you at this glimpse of a moment?
You have on the left side cost per click,
Yes.
and the clicks must be on the right side? Is that how it works?
Correct. Yep. Total landing clicks is there on the right-hand side.
Okay.
Anything else on that one?
He's the engineer, he's a numbers.
Yeah, just double checking my figures. It's okay.
Checking your figures.
So while he's doing that, we can always come back if you'd like, Ken. We just wanted to, from a chamber's perspective, say that we are really excited about the movements that are happening in Cle Elum, not only in the government side, but the other nonprofits that are really making some forward movements that's going to be a healthy future for the city of Cle Elum. And one of the things that I had the pleasure to be is the chair of the Economic Vitality Committee through the Cle Elum Downtown Association. And so I know Debbie probably went over that, but I just wanted to expand on why the chamber asked to be a chair, or I asked to be the chair of the Economic Vitality, is because the chamber has opportunities to support the Downtown Association through grant processes, the Department of Ecology. We had a great meeting with your planner. And there's a lot of opportunities that a nonprofit organization can take advantage of through the Department of Ecology, the rural gardening, through the Department of Commerce. So this is the purpose of the chamber. The chamber kind of looks at a broad view of how we can support everything from the nonprofit support, but also from small business support. And so we are working with other funding sources such as the Suncadia Community Enhancement funding. And we're hoping that we can come up with a program that helps expand or retain the businesses that are in Cle Elum, because we are finding that Cle Elum businesses are struggling. Each of them have a certain piece of struggle. It's not all the same, right? You have a generational business that might be doing well but struggling in trendy marketing efforts. Or maybe you have a new business that really didn't do their business plan very well, and so they need a little bit of assistance. So we are creating a program that we will be launching here in Cle Elum to help that process from a business planning resource that's going to be specifically for Upper County businesses. So through that, Suncadia Community Enhancement Funding is really partnering with us on that so that we can bring that to fruition hopefully by at least the beginning of 2020. So we're really excited about that opportunity from a chamber's perspective, because not only we get to support the Downtown Association, but hopefully that'll help with recruitment and infill opportunities for the city government, and which then will bring some tax-based revenue to help with all the other projects that are coming about. So the chamber is really excited. We're focused on the economic development that we can provide in the Upper County. And so if you have any questions that you would like to meet with me, I'm still coming up on Wednesdays. I'm more than happy to sit down with you and look at what our legislative goals are for 2020, especially supporting your efforts from a capital infrastructure. So I'm just opening that gate for you to come through and have conversation with me at the chamber level, because we're excited for what's coming ahead. It's going to be an exciting time. So that's my update for today. Is there any questions?
I'm doing some figuring.
Oh, it looks good.
Did I pass?
Oh, it looks good, yeah.
Good. Good. Well, thank you again for the opportunity to meet with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, we're done with public appearances, and we agreed earlier to move Mike Engelhardt up to new businesses noise variance request.
Honorable Mayor, council members, as you all know, the award for Pine Street has been awarded. We had our pre-construction meeting, and the contractor, due to the concrete pours with the availability, they said there's a possibility that they may have to start a little earlier in the morning to pour the concrete because of ECP and how busy they get this time of year. So they asked a request for a possible noise ordinance because they may need to start around 6 in the morning to get that concrete poured when they decide to do it up at Pine Street. We'll know in advance, so I'll be able to at least notify the homeowners that are going to be affected by any noise up in that area. But, so
What time would they ordinarily start?
7.
7, okay.
What, when is it gonna be, and like how many days will they?
Well, the contract starts July 8th, and that actually is a 20-day contract, so it's going to be a quick turn and burn. That's why we're asking now, because if they do need to start early, we're not going to have time to actually have a council meeting possibly during that time. So they're asking for at least an hour variance to be able to start at 6. Yeah, Monday through Friday. Won't be
I
any
will say that
weekend.
that will include backup alarms that are a little piercing that time of the morning. I'm inclined to, I mean, if I was living there, I'm far enough away I probably wouldn't hear it. But I remember the current Denny Lane, and they were starting at 5:30, 5:45 without authorization, and I didn't appreciate it. It's the backup alarms that
And it's just
wake
to get the
everybody up.
concrete trucks, and they'll back into position and be done. So if it is a backup alarm, it'll be just minimal.
Not equipment going back.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, the equipment
Because
will
what
be
it was equipment going back and forth, it was really loud, so, I'm gonna defer to Councilman Tom and finance staff who live closer.
Well, it's a valid request, and it's good that it came early, so I support it and make a motion and support it.
Is there a second?
Variance request.
Is it gonna be just for concrete trucks then?
Yes.
Yeah.
And for a certain time or for the whole project?
Well, it's 20, we'll have to,
Theoretically, the only concrete that's gonna be poured is the actual apron and curb and gutter coming down from, wow. I don't
That
know the name of the street.
Second Street, on the south side of Second Street, on the north end of Pine,
Right.
Second, And then,
Just the hill right there.
and then the hill on the west side, down to First.
There's no curb and gutter through the park or anything, it's just on the Pine Street Hill,
Should only be a couple days for that.
Yeah.
if that.
If that,
Yeah.
right, all one day, could be one day.
On second.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So is there a second to the motion? Anyone want a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Moved and seconded to provide the noise variance for the hour of 6 a.m. on the Pine Street project. Any other questions on the motion? If not, all in favor with aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay.
I
well,
was gonna vote against it.
Yeah, that's fine. So, the motion passes, and we can go ahead and do that, and then Mike, you have to run. Yes. All right. No, he doesn't want to, no, I agree with those. They did get quite a bit of chip sealing done, if you drive around.
I've seen it, yeah, appreciate it.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so now we'll go down to businesses requiring public hearings. And this will be ordinance number 1559. And what we'll have is Lucy will give us a PowerPoint presentation. And if you make notes about what it is, and then we'll open it to public comments, and then we'll bring it back to the council for discussion. So you should have a copy of the presentation, so when you run across something, jot it down so we can remember. All right? Okay.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council. I'm just gonna do this from here, if you don't mind, instead of over at the podium. So over the course of this 2-year plus process, we relied heavily on HLA Engineering, our city engineering firm, to do a bulk of the elements or chapters of the comprehensive plan, and then to help us pull it together. And so I wanted to introduce Deborah Lacombe from HLA, who is our key star player there, who's been through the entire process with us. And I think she wants to say a few words of just about the process before we get started with the rest of the presentation.
Thank you. It's great to be presenting in front of such a great city council. We started, first of all, we started with this bike and ped plan way back in the summer of 2017. At the very end of this, when this was adopted, we kicked off the comprehensive plan. We knew that we were going to use some of that bike and pedestrian plan. This is what the original schedule looked like. Yes, I still have a copy of it.
And it was this big.
It was, and so September was when the task order, the contract was signed between HLA and the city, and we started running from there. 2 years is not a lot of time. I've done a number of comprehensive plans, and it never, it seems like a lot of time at the beginning, and then it never, all of it gets kind of bunched up at the end, simply because of the interactivity of all of the elements. And so, thank goodness we had so much, what was that? No, we had 2 interns too, I was trying to remember.
Isaac and Savannah.
Savannah.
Yep.
Thank goodness we had Savannah at the very beginning with the land use meeting that we had, because she did a lot of the presentation materials. And it was the first time that the community got to see the extent of the planning that the Planning Commission was going to do, that Lucy was going to do, that the interns were going to help with, that Rob was going to have to approve, and that the city council would then be amazed at. So one of the very first elements that we did was the Park and Recs element. And we let everybody know that we were going to do that first because there was funding attached to it. And we needed to hit a deadline for that. So by December, within a couple of months, we had the first element out. And it was approved by RCO, and then we went after funding after that. Then we started doing all kinds of crazy things. We started training staff how to do traffic counts, and that delayed some of the schedule. And as we started looking at the capital facilities plan, as I'm sure we'll hear, there are different plans that normally are in place in larger cities that isn't necessary in smaller communities, but you guys are growing so incredibly fast that if you don't plan well, you're gonna be caught trying to catch up with decisions that you've already made. And so that's kind of what Lucy was handed when she was handed the comprehensive plan, and we started helping her almost immediately. There are quite a few elements that are associated with it, and as we worked on each element, we brought it to the public. Usually what we did was introduce an element in the same meeting. We put to rest one element. So they got to see what was done with finishing up one element and be introduced to the next element. And then the next meeting, we'd put that one to rest and start another one. So people who were able to participate really got quite a few public meetings. There were more public meetings with this comprehensive plan than I think any other plan that I've ever been involved with. And so it was wonderful. There was never an empty audience. And the planning commission always had tons of questions, and the city council always had tons of questions. So I think I was just going to talk really quickly about the schedule. I believe we're going to hit our deadline. Our deadline is at the end of this month. And so I think that's all I had to talk about. I'll come back and talk about capital facilities.
Yeah, we'll bring you back to talk about some of the comments that were received.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Deb. So this is the 2019-2037 comprehensive plan, and basically we're planning the change that's coming. So we're going to talk about, how we started. I know Deb touched on some of it. What's changed during the process with our plan, what the public process was, what were the highlights of the comments that we received, what the plan implementation entails, and then go to the Planning Commission recommendation. So why do we plan? Well, the law says we have to, essentially, but it's also a very good idea. So the Growth Management Act is part of our RCWs, and it requires cities to plan for population growth, assess aspects of growth such as economic development, land use, environmental protection, and to implement early and continuous public participation. So we just heard a little bit about that, and we'll hear some more. Plans of this type articulate goals and policies, actions, and standards to guide the day-to-day operations of and decisions of electeds and the local government staff. So how did we start? The GMA requires a periodic update every 8 to 10 years, and basically that GMA update is the comprehensive plan plus all the development regulations that implement the plan. So the plan isn't just by itself under this regulatory context. The previous plans that we did here in Cle Elum, the first one was 1997, the next one was 2007. So logically, we would have seen one in 2017, but a community of our size, we were allowed under the RCWs to take an optional 24-month extension, which then it collapsed our plan into an 8-year cycle. So we have a little bit less time to conduct the next one, but it was prudent to do that because I was hired in the end of 2016 and this plan was due less than a year later. So we kind of needed to do that. So the public process started in early 2017 with a vision statement that was developed by, first by the Central Washington University land use planning staff, advanced land use planning staff, who also did a series of focus groups here with many different groups in the community. And that helped to inform this vision statement and kickstart the comprehensive planning process. And at the same time, it kickstarted what our design engineers and landscape architects needed to get going with the revitalization project preferred alternative. We then went into adopting a resolution that adopted the Kittitas countywide planning policies were required to be consistent with, and a work program, which we'll get into. So the work program, this is kind of what changed in the plan. The work program is a public participation plan and a schedule. This allowed us to deliver the plan on time and on budget, maximize public participation while retaining a right-sized guiding document. So we didn't do all the bells and whistles that could possibly have ever been done, but we sure took it a long way from that 2007 plan that was honestly hard to pick up and digest and understand what even is this plan from 2007 to in 2016 when I picked it up. What we're hoping for is a more complete document. So we created an executive summary using that vision statement that ties all of these elements or chapters into place. We'll have a table of contents that actually pulls in all of those different elements. So it'll be an overall plan rather than just some check boxes that were checked and some separate elements. Some communities will do that. We're gonna have it be something that someone can take and use. It's developed in layman's terms, which will help for future changes in staff or council commissions, and also a usable community document. This has created a transparent and responsible and community-driven living guidance document for the city to support the collective vision that is inherent in the plan. So who got involved and how did we get them involved? We, as Deb said, we had numerous open houses where we invited the community to come in. We did everything from an exercise on the tables with the maps and pins and yarn to determine where the land use needed to happen, to big posters around the room and people putting up comments with sticky notes. We posted things on social media, in the newspapers, flyers, posters, the website. We have had an ongoing and comprehensive plan website that has links to all of the draft documents, all of the announcements, 2 years, 30 plus public meetings at the Planning Commission level, 5 open houses, and 4 public hearings, including the one this evening. Beyond that, we also had hearings, the 4 public hearings and submittals that were even more public process. So for example, the Department of Commerce requires a 60-day comment period that started in April and went till June. We had a SEPA, the State Environmental Policy Act checklist that went out to all the agencies with jurisdiction you could possibly imagine. Kind of separate from this, the transportation element went by itself over to QuadCo, which is the Quad County Regional Transportation Planning Organization that includes Kittitas County, for a separate certification process. And then last week, the Planning Commission voted to recommend the comprehensive plan to the City Council, and here we are tonight in the last bullet. So what changed with the individual elements? So just a little bit of a highlight and some graphics that you're not expected to be able to see real well, just kind of an idea. So we updated the land use map. We added a more robust environmental section to talk about all of our resources within the city limits. We expanded the cultural, archaeological, and historic context in the document, consistent with other updates that we're making in the city, like with our shoreline master program. Emergency management preparedness section was added. Our land use projections were updated, and you're going to see this on every slide. The goals and policies were updated. The goals and policies of the comprehensive plan are basically the to-do list for everything that we need to accomplish at the city moving forward to implement the plan. So in the capital facilities and utilities elements, you see the updated inventory of what we have. Capital facilities also looked at current and future demands on our public facilities, capital improvement program, funding sources, updated goals and policies. And then the utilities is mostly just an inventory of what utilities are available and maybe what needs to come. Under the housing element, which was the only element that was conducted by someone other than HLA, that was Burke Consulting, who are kind of some of the experts in the field with housing studies. We looked at current population projections, household and population trends, housing stock and cost analyses, housing strategies, and it really kind of took this to a whole new level. It's a very amazing document, and I've given it to people on standalone for a lot of realtors ask, what are the trends? People who are thinking about putting a business here, what's going on? This is something you can kind of hand to them and say, here's some information for you. Not that we couldn't do that with all the other elements. So the transportation element, we looked at existing conditions for all transportation modes, so bicycle, pedestrian, vehicles. We included the 6-year transportation improvement program. the levels of service discussion, which is kind of what this table is representing. What are the levels of service and what do those represent? We looked at traffic forecasts, the deficiencies and future needs, and possible funding sources. And this is where that traffic count training came in handy. We learned how to put, instead of ropes or across the road, people are used to seeing actual metal traffic counters that are kind of put a rubber cover over the top, and it's drilled right into the road in the center of a lane. And they were able to get all legs of major intersections.
Skimmers.
All over town, skimmers. Oh, maybe that's, no. So that was really interesting to also train the Public Works Department on how to move those around, how to collect the data, how to set them up in the computer system for the future, because then we have a workforce going forward that can continue to collect these over time. And that's a real value to the city for future development. So the last one is the Parks and Recreation element. Now this one is not, this was an optional element, and the reason why we opted is because our past plans included it, but also being that recreational tourism economy that we've developed into, the council and the commission felt that was very important. And as did the community. The Parks and Recreation open house got a lot of attention, a lot of great feedback from the community. So we did take it to another level, and we opted to pay a little bit more for this element so that it could become RCO compliant, or the Recreation Conservation Office at the state level is an agency that pretty much exists to give out money for recreation projects. And we wanted to make sure that we utilize the time wisely and the money wisely, because a lot of communities would develop their element for the comp plan and do this RCO plan later, and then you're spending more money and more time. So we combined them. This created consistency between the Cle Elum's plan and regional plans that's required for future funding projects. We identified priority projects in the community based on community input, identified project partnerships. This also includes as an appendix that bicycle and pedestrian plan that was identified with and paid for with the Complete Streets funding, first Complete Streets funding we received in 2017. We looked at facilities analysis, future needs prioritization, and possible financial sources for future projects. There's a lot of really great information in that plan. So over the course of all of this public outreach, all of these meetings, all of the notifications and hearings, it really boils down to 2 comments that were received. And those comments were from the Department of Transportation and the Department of Commerce. And I have a link to the letters, but I'm not going to open them up because really it just boils down to the information that's on the page. The DOT requested data to be included as an appendix to the transportation element, which we're doing. And then they requested some other information that we don't have currently available. And I'm going to ask Deb to just very quickly say how we're going to address that comment.
So one of the challenges that we ran into with the transportation element also dealt with the land use. We were given the assumptions that Kittitas County was using in their travel demand model, which is a computer model that is supposed to help you understand the conditions of the transportation system now, and then with population growth and industry growth, commercial growth, all of those land use decisions feed into the transportation model, and then are supposed to give you projections of what you can expect in the future. We didn't agree with those. And so we didn't agree with the land use that came to Cle Elum that was supposed to represent Cle Elum, and we didn't agree with the transportation results that came out of that model. So that started a conversation, great conversation, and because that conversation started, Kittitas County, WSDOT, Cle Elum, I'm not sure who all else was in that meeting because I wasn't sitting in there. I know Ben was sitting in there representing HLA. Will now be working towards putting in Cle Elum's belief for not only their current conditions, because those weren't agreeable to city staff either, and the future. So based off of the land use. Unfortunately, that means that those forecasts did not agree with what Kittitas County believes will happen here. And that makes us not consistent between Cle Elum and the county. And that's a requirement, but thank goodness we get to work towards that, so we're gonna be progressing towards that.
And basically what Deb's saying is that the information that was put into the transportation demand, travel demand model, that the county's transportation engineers used, that data that was input was at such a high clip level that was not representative of really what's on the ground in the city of Cle Elum. And an example would be, there were multiple, they break the city of Cle Elum into multiple polygons that are seemingly random. I don't exactly know how they get that, but doesn't matter. So they break them into these different polygons, and Isaac and I had like 3 or 4 computer screens with different maps and their map, and then trying to figure out where the lines were in the real life. And then we'd look at their data, and it was by square footage of a certain land use. So thousands of square feet for a certain land use. And so we kept seeing different polygons, and it would say, for this whole area, it's this certain number of thousands of square feet of industrial. And we go, that's the same exact number. And it was like with 6 decimal places out. This is weird. Okay, so that's the same number over here. Same number over here. This is strange. And it ended up being like this whole city block we're on right now with something like 100,000 square feet of industrial. And we're like, these numbers are not adding up. And it's because when they generated those numbers, they were doing it at such a high clip level. They basically said, we think Cle Elum will have this many square feet of buildings, of industrial building space in 20 years. And then it just kind of populated those areas automatically. And so what we need to actually look at modeling, travel demand modeling for specific intersections and actually on the ground in Cle Elum, not countywide like the county looked at. We needed to have the actual represented numbers placed in that model. So that's what we're going to be doing going forward, is really looking at the actual transportation information for the city, not on a countywide level.
I'm very glad you took a critical look at the county's numbers.
It was critical.
That's tremendous. So,
Yeah.
so it sounds like ongoing, we're gonna be adjusting this as we go, just on the.
And that's
I mean,
the
on the
point
fly,
of, yeah.
and that's not only all right, that's how it's meant to be.
Exactly.
That is how it's
That's how it's
Yeah.
done.
And one of the biggest questions that WASDOT had, that we will be talking with them about, is bullfrog flats and the development. What kind of transportation impact it's going to have. Until that forecast is correct, and until the current values are correct. Once those are correct, then we build a forecast. But the current ones aren't even correct. So for us to try to guesstimate, we did some spreadsheet analysis. And as you know, that's probably not very good, because we're only dealing with what's on the ground right now. So that is what they said, no, not currently available.
So if we didn't have information, the information doesn't exist yet, so we couldn't put it in the plan. So we've been communicating with DOT on that one. We also received a letter from the Department of Commerce, which we'll hear about during the public hearing portion. But we did, we were notified that a reference plan inside our plan had gotten a new date, or it was renewed during our 2-year process. So when we went in, it was 2004, now it's updated, so we need to update a date. And then the other one is some more information on the capital improvement plan. And did you have something you want to just say high clip about that?
You bet. So part of the planning process is taking some of the bigger plans that you have. Let's say you have a big sewer treatment plan, or you have a stormwater plan, and boiling that plan, that information down into the comp plan at a 6-year clip, just so that you see what's the current stuff. And then understanding how far it goes out. Well, each plan is being updated. It takes years to build the plans, so none of them have concurrent dates on them. But more importantly, you weren't required to have all of those plans. Since then, the city has started on a very major plan, which I'm sure Lucy will talk about. And that is part of the comments that we received was, well, where's the priority list for this specific infrastructure? And the answer was, we've just started on building that plan. So
Okay.
there will be some more.
Right, so I wasn't actually planning on talking about that, but I'll just mention, thanks. What they're talking about is the comprehensive sewer plan that we've, I think, started working on, I believe. So the comprehensive, it's not with me, it's with HLA, and it goes with the regional water and sewer program that I'm peripherally aware of, but I'm not actively involved with. So we are starting that, but it is integral to the information that'll be determined out of that planning process will go into the comprehensive plan. Whatever updates will amend that comprehensive plan in the future with that information. So it's not available yet, hasn't been started, but we will be addressing the comments from the DOT and, I see the note on the bottom of the page, we'll be addressing the DOT and the Commerce comments appropriately, and those will be included in the final plan. But we can move forward with adoption of the plan. So the future, what is the future of comprehensive planning? A lot of people think you just set it and forget it. It's on a shelf. If you need it, you grab it, and nothing else happens in between. And that really couldn't be further from the truth. Implementation. Implementation is what's next. And people don't necessarily know what that means or what it looks like, except when it's pointed out, you already know what it is and what it looks like. So implementation is citywide, and it takes place with strong regulatory and financial support. This has to do with development regulations and the capital budget. Everything in our development regulations, most of our municipal code and our capital budget decisions have to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So, we think, well, when you pick it up, you're looking for a specific project to see whether or not we can get grant money for that project, or can we do this project? It has to be in the plan. These are the things that I've heard of why the comprehensive plan is important. But it's so much more than that. When we set out those goals and policies in every single element of the plan, that is our guiding force moving forward with how we are going to conduct our business. So this happens, so everything is during the 2-year comprehensive planning process that we've been going through. We're still implementing the last plan. During that process, we're always implementing the plan between the comprehensive planning. So when you put down that plan and it's final and we give you your binders and we have it uploaded, we're now implementing that plan. The other ways to implement the plan besides the development regulations, the capital budget, those particular words, is, what are our policies? What are our regulations? What are the projects that we're doing in the city? What are our partnerships that we're developing and fostering? Those are the ongoing effort that implement the comprehensive plan. So the plan is the direction, and the implementation is the action to achieve the direction. And it's all part of that GMA requirement. So now to the portion about adopting the plan. So we have, like we talked about last week at the Planning Commission, they voted to, after 30+ meetings and all of these open houses and hearings that they've hosted at the Planning Commission level, that they've recommended to adopt the comprehensive plan. And so I need to pull up the recommendation. There we go. How do we get to the link? Okay, and now I have to move over here. And so this is the portion that, that is the,
Oh, there it is.
sorry about the Word document, so I can't put it full screen, but essentially this is the recommendation from the Planning Commission. And we do have, Kerry Clark had some concrete that was being set and it was raining and he ran in and out of here and said, "Great job, Isaac, we'll miss you. Please just give them my recommendation, and if Matthew comes, Matthew can talk on behalf of the Planning Commission." So Matthew Lund is one of our planning commissioners, and if you don't mind, if you can say a couple of words about that on behalf of the commission.
Hello there. So I'm going to try to do Kerry's words. He had planned justice, but I'm honored to be up here to be able to present the formal recommendation for the approval of the 2019-2037 comprehensive plan on behalf of the Cle Elum Planning Commission. Excuse me. We're very proud of the public process that went into crafting this plan. As Lucy said a couple times, the 30 commission meetings, We spent a lot of time and effort to make sure that we produced a really great document that we're quite proud of. I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge on behalf of the commission and thank Lucy and Isaac and Savannah and our consultants, HLA and Burke, for the truly tireless work that they put into getting all these elements written, and for Lucy for reviewing them and getting them to us. And it was a lot, but we're really proud of where we are. This document is more than just the bare minimum required by the state. That, as Lucy said, sometimes you could just put on a shelf and go on your way. We really think that this casts a robust and actionable vision for the future of the city. And I'm honored to present this plan with the inclusion of the forthcoming comments from Commerce and DOT for your approval on behalf of the Planning Commission. I look forward to implementation in the coming years. So the Commission recommends the approval of Ordinance 1559 to adopt the comprehensive plan update as proposed, contingent upon the appropriate response to Washington State Department of Commerce comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, it's very weird because I'm operating the mouse on this screen and not in front of me. Okay, so now, this would be the time when we would go into the hearing, hear from the public, and move forward.
Okay, so at this point, I will, after that presentation, I will open the public hearing to the public to address the council on the 2019 Cle Elum Comprehensive Plan. So with that, I'll open the public hearing and invite all who wish to address the council from what they heard tonight. And I think that probably, oh, here you go.
Honorable Mayor and Councilman, I'm not really into this, but I'm going to try to get into it more. But I certainly want to thank all of the folks that have done such hard work and will continue. And I want to get more involved in the city, not just coming to the council. And I look forward to all the exciting changes and growth. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you. So others?
Oh, did I forget to say my name?
Or it's good. Kathy knows me.
Patricia
Preston.
Yes, I'm
that
that.
is your name. You're a familiar commenter. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Scott Kukta. I am the representative from the Department of Commerce that you've heard a little bit about tonight.
Oh.
I'm happy to be here to support the adoption of this comprehensive plan. I'm based in the Spokane office, so it's always nice to come over to this side of the, the cusp of the Cascades. It's beautiful over here. And we have some family history here. My great-grandparents always tell a story, so if you've heard this story, my great-grandparents raised 14 kids up in Roslyn, the Barrett family. And Lloyd Olson was my great-uncle, so it's great to be back here. The Department of Commerce, our mission is very simple. It's to strengthen communities, and you heard a number of programs that we help fund as Commerce, and you have received a lot of money through some of our programs in recent years. So most people think of Commerce as pass-through money and different kind of infrastructure programs, but we do housing, we do weatherization, homelessness, a lot of programs. We're a very large and diverse agency. I work for Growth Management Services, and you've heard about this 60-day review, so I'll just clarify that role. It's actually a role of the Growth Management Act. It's not Commerce's requirement, but jurisdictions are required when they're adopting comprehensive plans to submit those plans for 60-day review. And we coordinate with other state agencies. They all get notification through our system of the 60-day review period. And I must admit, this is the first one that I didn't make within the 60 days, and I do apologize for that. A number of our smaller communities that I'm assigned to submitted at the last minute, and I'm not making an excuse, but we got a little bit bogged down. But I was happy at least to make some comments and come out for this hearing. The So the 60-day review, so our role is to review comprehensive plans and to provide technical assistance and guidance to communities. We have no authority for approval or denial or sending it back, start over. The only, hammer we may have in certain rare circumstances is to appeal a plan if it's a real egregious violation of, as in our view, of the Growth Management Act. And that has to go all the way up to the governor for an appeal, to authorize an appeal. So, our primary role is to support and assist the communities and to meet the, the core requirements of the Growth Management Act. So, you've heard all the work that was done here on this plan, and it's very impressive for a town in the proximity of 2,000 people to accomplish all that's been accomplished in the last 3 or so years, 4 years, 2 years for sure with the development of this plan. Some of the things that I included in the comments is the general organization. Cleanup was apparent. It's a lot of work, and that does take a lot of staff time to do that kind of work, to make sure that it all flows and that there's not a lot of redundancy and the chapters all speak to each other and are consistent. That's a requirement of the act, is the chapters have to be consistent with each other, even though sometimes there's competing policies from one to another. The public engagement process was as impressive as anything I've seen for a community of this size, or community of any size really. And then in particular, there's so many good things about the plan. In particular, I was impressed to see the section on climate change, and especially on these forested communities, we're seeing a lot of wildfire. We're seeing changes in our precipitation patterns and becoming more resilient in the face of what is happening and what is apparent is encouraging to see. And we're coming out with a guidebook on climate change soon, so if you want to do more work on climate change, then we'll have a little more guidance on that. So getting to the core main concerns that we had with the plan was the capital facilities element, and it is the hardest element for a town of 2,000 or a town of 100,000. It's a difficult task to gather up that information and make it make it readable, make it understandable, and because each function, water and sewer and parks, they all do their planning in a different way and they present their information in a different way. So it's really hard to assemble the information. But the core requirement is that you're supposed to show what facilities and services are needed for growth for the next 20 years for your community, where those services are needed based on levels of service if you have them or other criteria, and how are you going to pay for them. And how you're going to pay for them is, I think, one of the things that had been needs most improvement, I would say, is that, especially with the city funds, it said city funds is going to pay for some of these things. And it needs to be a little more specific than that, and it would help the city to be more specific than that. So you know on an annual basis, where's the money coming from, how much are we paying, and what are we going to be using it for? And we have some really good examples. Chelan, I've mentioned the city of Chelan, a small town, has a really good capital facilities improvement plan, a 6-year plan that they update annually, and they use it for their budget process, and the information is brought in and it's all in a consistent way. And it'll take some time to get there and some effort. But it really is helpful. It's like a business plan for the city. And it's really helpful to pull that information together in a consistent way, but it takes a lot of coordination, and especially if you don't have control, like you don't own the sewer system, right? But you're going to be doing work on it, and like as Simple said, you can integrate that into future updates. So that was really the meat of it, and I make those comments probably to almost every city, because that's really the hardest part. So moving forward, as Ms. Temple mentioned, keep the gas on the pedal. You've got a lot of good momentum. It's going to take a lot of effort to keep the momentum. You have comprehensive plan updates every year. You have, I'm talking to the mayor before the meeting, the bullfrog development over my shoulder here is looming, and that's going to take a lot of concerted effort. Implementation, reviewing your goals and policies and developing your priorities for your community and what you should tackle first. You've already demonstrated a really excellent effort in organization and planning to get funding, and I would encourage you to keep that up because you will be more competitive no matter what the grant program or loan program or the funding sources are. You will be more competitive when you're showing you're proactive and you've got good thought and you've had good community input into those planning documents. So keep that up. You have the shoreline update. We have an amendment in that's pending. Annexations. We didn't hear much. I didn't hear anything about annexations tonight, but that's something to think about. You have these areas outside your city. Develop. I can't remember if your plan had criteria for evaluating annexations, but that's something to think about. Just because somebody wants to be in your city doesn't necessarily mean it would be a good thing. Can you provide services? Is it financially feasible? Would it help the city? In theory, all of the urban growth boundaries around the city should become a part of the city at some point in time, but there might be some logical areas that would go first before. So annexations is something to think about. Your development agreement that you're working on. Housing. The legislature just passed a large housing bill, and housing is an issue across the state, affordable housing. Ellensburg's doing a really good job with their housing stuff. You have good policies and good framework in this plan, and we will have some money and programs over the next couple of years. The biennium, the legislature and the governor put a lot of money in housing, so keep your eye on things that have to do with housing through the Department of Commerce. And of course, your annual comprehensive plan updates. So the two things that Ms. Temple mentioned are your development regulations and your critical area regulations. The comprehensive plan update that you're working on, the periodic update includes those three elements: your comprehensive plan, development regulations, and critical areas. So it's not complete technically until all three of those have been reviewed and revised as necessary. So once you get the comp plan done, you'll still need to do some work on your development regulations just to make sure there's consistency. And some towns look at their development regulations and they say, no changes are made, we're consistent, we're done. It seems like there's enough changes in your plan that it'll probably require some changes to your zoning and your development regulations before you're done with consistency. So that's going to take some effort moving forward and the critical areas update as well. So sorry about talking so fast. I had a lot to cover, and you've been here for a while. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And if you ever want us to come out and help you out with anything else, we're always looking forward to opportunities to meet the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming down.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, I appreciate the overview.
You're welcome.
Yes. Any other comments from the public? Okay, if not, I'll close the public hearing and we'll open up to the council for deliberation on, go ahead.
Well, just one more thing here. I want to open up the ordinance because before you deliberate on the ordinance, you should see that there have been some changes made to the ordinance since the last time we saw it. And that is because of Mr. Cookta and my conversation, kind of wrapping up the commerce comments. So I wanted to add in, we need to add in the development regulations and critical areas, just to kind of put a highlight on critical areas. That, again, just reiteration down here, that the city's deadline to complete the periodic review of the comprehensive plan development regulations and including critical areas is June 30th. So all of the things he just mentioned, all the development regulations, critical areas updates, and the plan itself that we're talking about tonight, those are all due June 30th. It's pretty difficult with day-to-day planning and all of the big and small things that we have going on to get all of that done, and all the permitting and development that's happening. So we are working on that. We have, we're almost ready to submit our whole zoning title to Commerce, or to the process soon. And then it just goes through all of the recitals that I'm sure you've reviewed already. We had the work plan, the public process that it was posted on the city website and since 2017 updated, that we passed the resolution. A lot of this is just kind of rehashing what I talked about in the presentation. And then scoping process, open houses, we kind of needed to detail everything that we did. went out to Commerce, did SEPA, went to Quadco. Here's a new one that the process, we work to evaluate the development regulations and ensure consistency with requirements in the RCW. That we demonstrated our intent to comply with the comprehensive plan, including development regulation, critical areas updates as required under the RCW, and that we've made substantial progress towards analyzing the city's comprehensive plan and development regulations. And then, although we've undertaken significant steps to analyze the development regulations and critical areas, more time is needed for us to complete that review and any necessary updates, including conducting required public processes related. Then, last week, we had the Planning Commission hearing, and this week we are here with the City Council. So now you have the gist of the updates on the ordinance, and that we will be addressing Commerce and WashDOT comments appropriately as we discussed. Now you have all of the information.
So then the now therefore is identical to what we have.
Exactly. And I can go back to the Planning Commission recommendation here if it's helpful, which has an idea of what the action requested is. And I would say I would add that it's WashDOT and Commerce comments that we will be addressing.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we pass ordinance number 1559 as amended by staff to adjust for these Department of Commerce, etc. things. And if we get a second, we can talk about it.
I'll second it with also Carrie's strong recommendation from all the work they put on it, Sarah and Scott's. I second that motion.
Okay, moved and seconded to adopt ordinance 1559, adopting our new 2019 comp plan, comprehensive plan. That's what it says. Any questions? Was curious about anything?
It's an exhausting amount of work.
Yeah, it is.
And it's going to continue.
It's going to continue.
We're committed to that.
And it's actually better than anything we've ever had,
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Any no comments? Well, if there is no comments, all those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. It's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just ask that you bring me your comp plan binders at some point in the next month or so. You can leave them at the front desk and those will be updated. And you can also let me know if you want a binder, because we will be putting everything on the website. So if you don't want a binder at all, bring it to me. If you want it back, let me know.
How are we going
Thanks.
to get up this into the budget every year? I think that was a good suggestion.
Yeah, well, so what Mickey is asking me is, how do we include this in our budget deliberations, that we be sure, because Scott Tupta had some good recommendations on how to use this for planning, a business plan for our different departments, water, sewer, and all of that.
Makes an awful lot of sense moving forward.
Yeah, so that with this, we can use this to help guide our budgetary decisions, and that we need to.
In fact, it's required.
Yes. Well, and it was a good point, city funds. Well, okay, as an example, we are looking at our regional sewer system, and one of the things, important parts of it is that we begin to save a serious amount of money for future improvements, which is what he's telling us. And we're well on the road to doing that. But we have to do that for our own plant and for, our portions of those and the other ones, parks and all that. So we are going to have to learn how to think differently about how we allocate money. And we basically, like it says, have to start planning for a population of 4,000 people. Any other comments at all? Let's see, somewhere I have an agenda here. I think that so, let's see, I think that we're, okay, now we have before us, though, the 60 transportation plan, which Ben is not here. Who's covering that?
We can.
Okay. All right.
You're right.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the 6-year transportation improvement program, this is resolution 2019-008, but it's for the 2020, sorry, not the 2020.
That's the old one.
2020
Yes.
six-year transportation plan, you know, we update it annually. And this would take us through 2025, but again, we'll be back every year to update this plan. This was mentioned as being included in the transportation element, but again, it's updated annually. So this is kind of an example of what Scott was just talking about, having a six-year plan for all of our different capital facilities programs. If you have any questions about specific projects, I can give you information. Otherwise, we just need to run a hearing and.
Yes, okay. So I'm not sure what, I guess that would be our introduction to the six-year street plan. I mean, and we have to open a public hearing on it. And this is to introduce basically our 2020 to 2025 street plan, and there is, so we'll take a look at that. I'll open the public hearing and see if there's anybody who wishes to address the council about our six-year street plan, transportation plan. And if there's no one wishing to comment on it, I'll close the public hearing, and you guys can decide if you want to pass this or not. And this, of course, we can, and if I'm not mistaken, this is amendable at any time.
Well, Mr. Mayor, just a comment. I can remember when we would put together
A sheet of paper.
one sheet had $30,000 to $60,000 worth of chip seals and pothole patching on it. This, what, $6 to $10 million?
I haven't added it up.
Well, anyway, it's because of the planning effort and Quadco and Complete Streets and these things that we've turned a corner that's, I mean, it's exponentially better with the funds that are coming to this community. And it's all happened under your watch, so thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That's all right. So, what this is, if you're gonna apply for money, it better be in your plan. And we're planning way out the road on this, especially with the Complete Street program. We're gonna improve the walkability of this town. So, and is there possibly a motion to pass the resolution?
I make a motion that we pass ordinance number, what is it, 15?
No, 2019-00.
Resolution. Yeah, 2019-008, yeah.
Second.
Moved and seconded to pass resolution number 2019-008. Any questions on the motion? If not, all in favor of aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We're moving along. We're taking care of business. Okay?
Yeah, I just want to make one comment about the transportation improvement plan program, because we will, you just said that this is amendable at any time. We are going to be coming back with the 2019 for the current year tip, because we did just receive an award letter from the Department of Transportation to reconfigure the Stafford Avenue and 2nd Street intersection that's between the Coal Mines Trail and Flagpole Park. That intersection has a lot of issues, and so now all we have to do, the project was on the tip, but we need to go through and amend it that shows that it's funded and adjust the amount. And that's all. So we'll be coming back to you at the next council meeting with that.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So, any committee reports? If not, I don't know. Number 12 says motion.
Motion
by
to
motion.
adjourn. I'll second it.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for helping us with this
I
process.
think you out.
It was okay. It's only 8 o'clock.
Not even.
Not even.